Welcome to Mental Game Mastery, where we dive into the world of sports psychology and peak performance, designed for you to level up your athletic career.
Hey there, athletes. I'm your host, Coach P, bringing you mental performance insights and stories from being in the trenches of athletic coaching. As a mental performance coach, I get the privilege to work with all athletes across all sports. One thing I have noticed is that when it comes to seeking optimal performance or being at the top of their game, athletes have a tendency to make things a little more complex than they need to be. So I want to simplify it for you up front. Performance can be boiled down to 4 simple steps into what I call the athlete performance cycle. Step number 1 is prepare. Step number 2 is perform. Step number 3 is reflection. And step number 4 is rinse and repeat. So in today's episode, I want to take a little closer look at step number 3. I want to focus on reflection because every athlete knows that they should do it, but the majority of them skip this important step in the athlete performance cycle. Whether you're an athlete, or maybe you're a coach listening to this, or a parent of an athlete, I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. How much time goes into preparing for competition? How much time goes into actually competing? And then how much time is invested in reflecting on that performance? Most athletes will tell you, if they're being honest, the majority of their time is spent preparing, practicing, training, film, and meetings. And I'm going to make a safe bet to say that most athletes skip the reflection component. So, my question is, why is it so hard for athletes to journal? Well, I'd like to think it's because journaling, just like watching film, forces athletes to face their mistakes. Reflection is where most of the learning happens. Learning happens after the test. Reflection is where you get to extract that DNA from your performance and improve your preparation moving forward. Your ability to reflect will yield the most success. Elite performers reflect after every performance. Kobe did it after each game. Listen to his conversation with Lewis Howes on how he learned to watch film.
So Katie Lou Samuelson is one of the best college basketball players in the country. She plays at UConn. She's going to be a senior
Right now.
right now.
Yeah.
And she's from Huntington Beach out here by us. And so she comes down and she works with some of my girls on the team and she helps coach. And,
Yeah.
and they just had a really tough season last year where they lost to Notre Dame in the final.
That's right.
Really tough.
First loss in like
First loss.
years, right?
Yeah. And so I asked her, I said, have you watched the Notre Dame game? She was like, no. I said, well, why not? I said, I don't want to watch that. I said, I know you don't, but you're going to play Notre Dame this year, yeah? Yeah. What's the chances you see him again in the final? He goes, well, you probably see him again. I said, well, you can't show up and play them without knowing why you lost that one, right? So, you know, the mistakes that you've made in that game, you have to do the hard stuff and watch that game and study that game to not make those mistakes over and over again just because you weren't brave enough to face it. So she came down to the office. I brought her down to the office and we sat down. We watched that game together.
Wow.
Right? And you gotta deal with
Face it.
You gotta deal with it. Face it. Learn from it.
Wow. It must have been cringing for her to just be like, oh,
Yeah.
replaying like we could have won, all
Well,
these things.
that's exactly it, isn't
If
it?
I just did that one thing,
That's exactly
if I
right.
didn't get that foul, if I was scored that
Exactly
layup.
Right. That's exactly right. You're looking at it and say, oh, there's the mismatch. Oh, there's the gap. You know, and all those little things, and it sucks. But you don't want to have that feeling again, do you? Right? So you got to really study it, face it, and not to say you'll win the next time you face it, but at least you'll give yourself a better chance.
Yeah. And what was your routine and ritual like after every game? Would you watch almost every game over or certain games?
All of them.
Every game you watch?
Every game.
The whole game
The
back?
whole game.
No
So,
way.
Yeah. So it started with me when I was when Phil Jackson's his first year here with the Lakers. One of his assistant coaches, his name was Tex Winter, and I call him Yoda. I mean, he was like 82 when he got here.
Wow.
And he was responsible for teaching me the triangle offense.
How old were you then?
I was 21. And I thought we were going to watch what we call touches. So watch all your touches when you have the ball, all the decisions you make, good ones and bad. No, we're watching the start of the game to
gosh.
the end of the game. And not like the TV feed. We're watching the in-arena feed. The layup line, the timeouts.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, rewinding, stopping, fast forward, rewinding, slow motion, every little thing, every game of that season. with the 82-year-old Yoda,
Oh my gosh.
who is as brutally honest as you can get.
What did that teach you that season?
Oh, it taught me to look at detail. Right, look at things at their smallest. Right, look at body language. You know, look at the energy between players, our team and the other team.
Wow.
Right, look at the tactics. You know, look at the overall strategy, and then look at how tactically things are manifesting themselves. And because I watched so much film, then it gave me the ability to see game in real time as if I was watching film.
Thank you, Lewis, for that interview. Man, we miss Kobe. If Kobe journals his game performances, if Beyonce journals ways to get better after performances, if Tom Brady was religious about his film study and his journaling, how about you? After each practice, and especially after competition, no matter the outcome, I have the athletes I work with reflect on their performance in a journal. And if knowing that elite performers journal is not enough education to inspire you to keep your own performance journal, I don't know what will. So, how does journaling help? Well, whether you win or you lose, there's a lot to learn from each performance. You see, your process is always more important than the actual outcome. Your process should include time for reflection, which is extracting the learning in order to get better. So you have to ask yourself, what did I do well? What do I think I can do better? And how am I going to enhance what I need to do better? That's the first step that you're going to take in your performance journaling. So after a training, after a practice, or after a performance, sit down with your journal and write down, what did I do well? What do I think I can do better? And how am I going to go about getting better? It doesn't really have to be anything fancy. A regular notebook can be just fine. But if you'd like a template, you can download the digital version of the Heroic Athlete Daily Journal at coachp.net/journal. Your well better how is laid out for you in three different areas of athlete development: your fundamentals, your performances, which includes training and practice, and your relationships. I give you a morning reflection and an evening reflection. Or you can open up to the first page of a blank notebook and simply write down three words: well, better, how, and get to work. But let's look at this well, better, how. The thing I love about it is after training or after practice or after a competition, it forces you to start with looking at what you did well. Most athletes, when they reflect, only think about the negative of what they could have done better, especially with their mechanics. They'll ask, what didn't go my way? And this is good to look at because when a weakness is revealed, you want to improve upon it. But it's best to start with your wins. Set the stage for your mindset. What did I do well? What can I do better? And how am I going to enhance it? If that's literally all you did with your performance journal, then you've set yourself up for the next day where you'll open up the journal and there it is, looking at you. Those three simple words. This allows you to take your mindset and then connect it from what you did yesterday into today. And so, why does this work? Well, for one, it takes the guesswork out of what to focus on in your training, in your practice, in your performances. But for a lot of athletes and even coaches I work with, it helps them with one of their biggest challenges, and that's refocusing back on the other aspects of life after they leave their sport for the day. It's separating the student from the athlete, the business professional from the athlete, the parent from the athlete. You see, your well, better, how journal allows you to keep the game on the field and to always be where your feet are outside of your sport. Writing down your well, better, how notes post training, post practice, post performance helps you let go of the game. You can then move into other areas of your life knowing there's something to come back to when you need to get your head back in the game. And then pre training or pre game, you can look at what you wrote down and then maybe make a little note on what your most important thing is for today's training or today's practice and what you're going to lock in on during those sessions. What's my number one thing that I need to do for my day's training? And then evaluate it at the end of the day. So, what else can you gain from journaling? Well, it's great for so many areas of sport and for life. Let's say, for example, you're a baseball or a softball pitcher, and you're going to want to evaluate your execution. Execution is where you throw that baseball or that softball, and it's the only thing that you can control. Now, let's say you're a golfer. You might look at your stats and you put your stats down after a round in your journal so you can see it there. And then you can take your notes about your well, better, and your how. And if you're a football player, you might do some reflecting on how well you did going play by play and then series by series. We want to have some form of evaluation that is other than just the outcome of did I win or did I lose or what does the box score say? Because we don't always have control of the outcome of winning or losing. But there's a very specific process that you can create based off of your sport that becomes part of that post game, post training, post practice reflection with your well, better, how. And then you can use that information moving forward. And over time, you've developed a peak performance Bible. So let's dive a little deeper. Now, if you want to keep a performance journal on a daily basis and you want to add some mindset work to it, let me share with you some of my favorite and most used strategies that can help you develop your heroic mindset. The first is to write down 3 wins in your last 24 hours. And I've built this into the Heroic Athlete Daily Journal. And then you can look at 3 victories that you had in the last 24 hours, no matter how big or small they are. You can write down 3 gratitudes that you're taking with you from the last 24 hours. What are you grateful for? And both of these suggestions are backed up by research. The 3 wins, BJ Fogg and his book, Tiny Habits. BJ's a professor at Stanford. And then the 3 gratitudes is from Robert Emmons and his book, Gratitude Works. And they talk about all the research behind why celebrating your 3 wins and having gratitude are an important part of you being an elite level competitor. Additionally, you might want to write down your MIT, and that's your most important task for today's training or today's practice. And what's the number one thing that you need to lock in on today? So, how does this help you outside of your sport? Well, that's why I built in relationships in the Heroic Athlete Daily Journal. Let's call it a framework of start, stop, and continue. Based on your behavior in the last 24 hours, what is it that you need to start doing? What is it you need to stop doing? And what is it you're going to continue doing with yourself and with the people around you? And this is also the reason why I built into the Heroic Athlete Daily Journal reflection on relationships, starting with self. What is going well? What do I need to do better? And how am I going to enhance it with myself? Because self is where it starts. And your journal can also include things you've learned. Let's say you have team meetings. I work with a school that has several former professional athletes on staff as coaches. I once asked the players if they bring a notebook to team meetings. Well, we didn't our first one, but then it was made mandatory by the 15-year former NFL pro head coach that they bring a notebook to team meetings. Let me understand this. You have a former NFL pro, a perennial Pro Bowler as your head coach, and you showed up without a notebook to your meeting? Well, that's not just the high school athlete. I have a friend who's also a mental performance coach, and he was working with a player in the San Francisco Giants organization. And this player last year mentioned to him that he felt like he was underperforming in spring training. And my friend said, "Well, are you journaling every day?" And the player said, "No." And my friend said, "Okay, well, let's start there because you never know what will be said or who will show up to a meeting." And my friend had the same response I would have. You mean to tell me that you think your organization is organized enough that if one of the best players ever, let's say Barry Bonds, were to come rolling through, do you think that they are going to have spur of the moment notice of that appearance planned? So guess who ended up showing up to a minor league meeting that that player was in? Yep. And guess who was the only one with a notebook? Yep. So in the corporate world, I see quite a few C-suite executives bow out of meetings on the basis that they've heard the information before. Well, what should be happening is that they hang out in the meeting with a notebook and listen to the questions that the people in their organization are asking. But how will bringing a notebook to your every meeting get you to the next level? Well, it won't necessarily, but it will allow you to get the most out of every single day that you have. And when you get the most out of every single day that you have, that is your ticket to the next level. That should be your standard, regardless of the level that you play at: professional athlete, college athlete, high school athlete, business professional, C suite executive. Have a notebook in every single meeting. Why? Because you never know the one day that your life can be changed from the content that gets shared with you. The biggest gap of where you are now to where you want to be is only filled with what you know and what you will learn and what you will do with that knowledge. The knowledge you gain is powerless unless you apply it. The question is, do you want to be a librarian guarding the knowledge, or do you want to be a knowledge warrior who goes out and applies it? Most athletes know that they should reflect, they just don't do it. Most athletes know they should keep a journal as part of their routine, they just don't do it. Make today count by applying just one strategy you have learned from this video. When talent level's the same, what's your separator? Whether that's bringing a notebook to a meeting or you just start journaling a well better how. So pause for a moment to decide and then take action by applying that one thing today, not tomorrow, today. Want to learn more strategies around confidence, overcoming obstacles, how to conquer fear of failure, and learn how to consistently perform at your best? Well, go to my website, coachp.net. Sign up for my newsletter. Sign up for my mental game strategies listed in the description of this show. And if you found this show insightful, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this on your social channels. And above all, don't forget to subscribe. Continue reflecting in your journal, working your well better how, and remember, the time is now.